Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of your safety and your own personal safety, we ask that you keep a close watch on your carry-ons and personal belongings.
Welcome to the AeroExploration Podcast, where aviation's past, present, and future meet. We explore the stories that build aviation history, take you inside the industry today, and uncover the career paths and innovations keeping the industry in motion. We go behind the scenes, into the cockpit, and onto the ramp, meeting the people and discovering the places that define aviation. If it's part of the flying world, you'll find it here. This is AeroExploration.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the AeroExploration Podcast. My name is Jim, and I'm so glad that you're able to join me on this episode as we are going to explore another Fly the Transition story. So we're going to talk to Collin, and Collin worked in the agriculture industry doing a few jobs before a chance meeting on a party bus of all places with a pilot propelled him into wanting to join the aviation industry. So he's currently a pilot with NetJets flying in the corporate world. So we'll hear a bit about his story in just a few minutes. So I learned something interesting this week, and before I tell this story, I am not sponsored by ForeFlight, but it is a feature that I stumbled upon by accident, and I don't think it's available on every subscription level, but it is on mine. I have the quote-unquote essential level. It's kind of that mid-tier. I think it used to be called Pro. Anyway, that's not the important part. What I learned is I took a flight by myself last week, and I thought, because I'm doing some maneuvers and walking through some maneuvers by myself, I want to be able to go back and critique that. So I hit record for recording a track log of where I was flying. So those are you are not familiar within this program, ForeFlight, which is an electronic flight bag, as we call it. It's got moving maps, all that stuff, but it will track your flight if you use that feature. So if I hit this button record, it will track my progress around the map, and I can go back later and look at where I've been and my altitudes, airspeeds, things like that. So I go through all my flight, I do all my maneuvers, and from there, I go back to my desktop computer later, and I pull up ForeFlight on the website, and I pull up that track log, and I see there's a score next to it. I'm like, what is that? I've never seen a score next to my flight. So though the track log is there by itself, I clicked on this score, and it ran through every single maneuver that I did. It broke it down. So if I were to drill down into this further, I could follow the track log and go, all right, yeah, that's where I did steep turns. That's where I did the lazy eights. And if I clicked on each of those maneuvers, it would show me how it scored me based on the Airman Certification Standards and where I fell within that with my own flying. Now, maybe I'm way late to the party on this, and like I said, I completely found this by accident, but what a cool feature to be able to debrief your flight like that, to compare what you've done in the air and not just go look through all the track log information on your own, but for ForeFlight to pull that out, be able to recognize a maneuver and then score it and show you how you did when compared to the very standards that you will need to fly to on a check ride. So awesome feature. I love it. I'm going to use it forever. And I look forward to seeing how that will benefit not just myself, but potentially future students. Also, there's an exciting merchandise announcement. We updated the merch store to include now some more long sleeve apparel as we get closer to the winter months. Even you down in the south, sometimes it gets colder, like, 60 degrees, and you might want a long sleeve shirt. So at any rate, we've updated our merch store. There are long sleeve shirts, there are hoodies, cool stuff like that. And if you act now until October 1st, I have a coupon code in place for you, COLD20, for 20% off your merchandise order. So if you're looking for not just AeroExploration merchandise, but also any Flying Midwest podcast merchandise, if you jump on there, it's flyingmidwest.com/merch. And then, like I said, the code is COLD20, and I will have that down in the show notes. All right, now the moment you've been waiting for, into our interview with Collin as we explore another journey of aviation career transformation in a Fly the Transition episode. So I'm really excited to welcome Collin. There are some moments where I selfishly ask some questions about my own son's possible journey into agriculture, but I think it all still plays into the overall theme and story of his aviation move. So without further ado, welcome Collin to the podcast. So how you doing, Collin?
I'm doing great, Jim. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you for a couple of reasons. A couple of them are selfish, but I am curious to hear a bit about your story, where you came from, things like that. So I want to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, Collin, how were you first exposed to aviation?
Oh, my first exposure to aviation, I think was in sixth grade. We had a family member that was in poor health in Los Angeles, and me and my mother took a flight out there out of Minneapolis on Delta, and that was the first time I'd ever been on a jet. I was super excited. Um, I was probably a little old, but my mom almost forced me up into the cockpit, and she goes, "I've got my son here. Wants to talk to the pilots." I got the
Yeah.
little plastic wings,
There you go.
but that was a really cool experience for me.
Okay. So at that age, did you even know what aviation was for a career? You just know you see these cool pilots in these cool big planes, or like, was it something that interests you further? Did you explore that more? Or?
It was definitely interesting. At that point in my life, I didn't think of it even as a career. That kind of formulated later on in life. But definitely cool. Young kids always think that to see an airplane is pretty cool. I think for anybody.
Yeah. So as you're growing up, though, did you have any other exposure to aviation, or did you work towards, did you want to learn how to fly at that, in your teenage years or anything like that?
More so in my teenage years.
Okay.
As you're thinking about what you want to do with your life, you're like, wow, being a pilot would be kind of cool. I was really terrible at math. Math was probably one of my poorest subjects.
Okay.
So I was always in my head, I was like, maybe being a pilot's not, going to be cut out for me.
Yeah.
But later on in life, as I got more exposed to aviation, I realized you really don't have to be a mathematician to fly an airplane.
I've never used complex algebra or geometry when I've flown. So
Never.
So as you're getting towards college, what direction did you decide to go for a career or a college degree?
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm, rural Iowa, a small town called Rockford.
Okay.
About 800 people there. And I grew up in a family where my dad and my grandpa farmed. My brother went to Iowa State University for agriculture, so that was just kind of the trend that I followed in. And I went to North Iowa Area Community College, and I got a couple degrees. I got a associate's degree in sales and service, and then ag operations.
Okay.
And that was all. It was kind of a mixed pot there. We kind of learned it all. There was a little bit of agronomy. There was sales in there. We even learned how to tune up planners. It was kind of a mixed bag, but a really good experience there.
Okay.
It was unlike a lot of different programs I can imagine. I had the same classes with all of the classmates, so we all got to know each other really well, and we had a pretty good bond going. So I had a good experience.
Good. Yeah, I asked about the ag business part because my son is looking at going to college for that. So we've been doing some college tours at UW River Falls and some other places to kind of get an idea of what the ag business world looks like for him. And he kind of was looking towards the direction of, I want to be more generalized. I don't want to be specialized. I want to do just dairy. It's just, he thinks being more, generalized might be better for him. So as you're going through and getting your degree, what was your plan with it? Did you want to go back and work on the farm? Did you want to get into the sales side of it? You mentioned you got an associate in the sales portion. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I really wanted to, gain some knowledge about ag in general so I could go back and contribute to the family farm. Because I really didn't know much about it. I didn't help out in the field or much in high school. I ran the quad track, did some cultivation. That was about as far as that went. So I wanted to gain some expertise to help out. There wasn't any room for me on the family farm, though, unfortunately. My dad, my grandpa, and some of his cousins farmed about 2,500 acres of row crop. But that was amongst 5 people, so there really wasn't room for another person.
Okay.
So when I was in high school, my first job was working in a hog confinement, doing some chores on the weekends, taking care of the pigs. And after I graduated, I got offered a job to take care of a nursery site. So that's what I went with. So I was a caretaker for a 8,400 head site of nursery pigs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was busy. It was a busy job for sure. So that's took some of the animal care technology I had gathered from school and then got to apply that to that job.
Okay. So for the listener who might not know what, the the nursery site would be. That, I mean, can you explain that a bit to us? I have a rough idea, but no expert.
Yes. So they're born and they're taken care of for about 3 weeks at a farrowing site, and then they're brought to a nursery where we raise them from about 10 pounds up to about 50 pounds. Took about 8 weeks, and then they would get shipped out to a finishing barn where they would spend the rest of their life before they got sent to the packing plant.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's a lot of animal care then, getting them, through those first couple months, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a lot of vaccinations, a lot of different stages just in that short amount of, 8 weeks.
Anything else that you did in agriculture at that time, or did you stick with the hog farm business?
That was strictly the hogs. I did that for about a year, and then I was offered I'll call it a managerial role, I guess, for a company just south of Minneapolis. Richfield was where the headquarters was.
Okay.
But a lot of these sites that I would go visit in this managerial role, I was looking after herd health, ordering medicine, just kind of talking to the caretakers, seeing what they need, making sure everything was getting done as it needed to be done. So I transitioned to that role, and that was very short-lived. That was only for about 4 months. Was not enjoying that. And that's kind of when I was at that job is when I started taking flight lessons.
Okay.
And when I had quit the job as a manager for that farm, I had even considered going to like an ATP accelerated location. Did not end up doing that. So I was working and then taking some lessons on the side, which ended up taking a lot longer than I
It sure does.
had wanted it to. I was working part-time in a co-op concurrently when I was in college, the University of Dubuque.
Okay.
So
What kind of stuff were you doing in that job?
the co-op job, loading rail cars. I would drive semi out to the field to tend the sprayers. So just load
Okay.
up with chemical and then taking it out to the sprayers. That was a really good job. I really enjoyed that job. A lot of camaraderie there. You get to know the guys really well.
Sure. And sometimes you can take a job that at face value wouldn't be like super awesome, but the people around you really make it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a really good time.
So in the agriculture field, what are some of the pros and cons of that work as you were working through it?
I would say it really teaches you to have a good work ethic. Sometimes you just, even if it's not something that you enjoy, just put your head down, get through it, and get it done right. Definitely the pros are camaraderie. I really enjoyed the co-op job, getting to know all the guys that I worked with.
Okay.
You learn a lot of skills that you wouldn't think you would know. For a lot of people, that wasn't their first job. There was a electrician that was his first job, and then he came to the co-op after he left being an electrician. So I got to learn very basic electrical skills.
Okay.
That you wouldn't think that you would learn at a farmer's co-op.
Right.
So that's definitely one of the pros. The cons, I'll say, kind of back and forth here, but when I was in the managerial role for the hogs, it's pretty labor intensive. It could be hard on the body.
Okay.
You'd have to vaccinate these pigs. You catch them, pick them up on that back leg, and you would have to vaccinate them in the neck area. And when these pigs, they're squirreling around, sometimes that can be pretty hard on the shoulders.
I'd bet.
Having a 30-pound weight, thrashing around.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the pros and the cons just off the top of my head.
Okay. So you talked about starting to take flight lessons. When you did that, was it just out of interest of aviation, or were you thinking about maybe a career in it?
Definitely a career. And this is a strange story here, but it stemmed from, I went to the junior college, and a lot of my other friends went to universities. So I would go visit them, on the weekends. And we went on a party bus one weekend, and there's somebody sitting next to me, and I start chatting him up, and, just basic opening lines. You're like, what are you majoring in? And he goes, well, I'm actually a pilot. I don't go to school here. I majored in aviation at University of North Dakota. And I probably completely fangirled over this guy that night. Had so many questions for him. And that's what really, really interested me. He gave me his phone number, his email, asked a few follow-up questions the next day. And then the day after that, which would have been Monday, I was calling my local airport in Trail City. And that's pretty soon after when I got started to the flight lessons.
So I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier as far as the direction that you took with your flight lessons and how it took maybe a little longer than you initially anticipated. So you mentioned doing like an accelerated ATP type program. What were some of the thought processes that you had that led you in one direction or the other?
ATP was a recommendation from the pilot that I met to get through the fastest. Unfortunately, that program is quite expensive. So that's what really deterred me from going to ATP.
Okay.
So I wanted to try to work concurrently and pay for the lessons. So that's the direction that I went. And unfortunately, that really stretched out that timeline.
Yeah.
From 0 to check ride, I think it was 2 years.
Oh, wow. For your driver's certificate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a long time. So that's when about the 1 year mark, I had just soloed. And, that's kind of the downhill from there,
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can see the finish line. So I was like, okay, I really need to accelerate this timeline. So I took a tour over to the University of Dubuque, the university, and checked out their flight program. And I enrolled very soon after I checked out the campus and the program. So I was driving back and forth from college on the weekends to try to finish up my private pilot certificate. Getting real close, getting the cross countries knocked out. It was a very poor winter that winter, so didn't do much flying. And then COVID-19 happened. So really stretched out that timeline.
Yeah. So you mentioned COVID-19. How did that impact your flight training? I mean, did it pause it for a while, or is it something where eventually you had instructors like, let's just go, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, it ceased the flight training for probably about 10 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
And, my training was very stop and start. So I feel like every time I got back in the airplane, you're relearning everything again.
Yeah.
And then that 10-week hiatus really, I felt like I had never been in an airplane before at all. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. With 10 weeks off, how did you feel getting back in? I mean, it sounds like, you said you feel like you haven't been in a plane at all, but like, how long did it take you personally after a 10-week break to start to get back in the groove of things?
Realistically, probably only a few hours, but I definitively remember on the ground, making a radio call and your heart rate gets up a little bit. And, man, I feel like this is the first radio call I've ever made in my life.
Right. The mic fright is real.
It really is. But it definitely just a little rusty, but it breaks off pretty fast.
Okay. So as you're going through your training and deciding I want to go into aviation as a career, did you have a specific direction that you wanted to go? I mean, did you think I'm going to go to the airlines or corporate, or what were your thoughts there?
I did. Even up until a couple of years ago, if you'd asked me what I wanted to do, I was 100% going to be an airline guy. That's the direction I wanted to take. That's the only direction I really knew. In college, we'd have all the airlines come in, they'd chat with you. We never had any corporate companies come in. So that was really pounded into us, airlines.
So your private pilot, it sounds like it took you a while to get to. After that, did things pick up at all, or was it kind of still work through it as you could until you got your different ratings?
It really picked up after that. After I got my private pilot's license, I did a little bit of a transition course going from the 61 to the 141. It was maybe like 5 hours just to make sure that, that you kind of up to the standards of the program. And so that was pretty quick. And then it went right into instrument. And I think I started instrument training in October of 20, and then I finished that in May of 2021. So much, much faster than the private pilot's license.
So
and that,
go ahead.
I think that was attributed to, instead of flying like maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, I was flying sometimes 3 to 4 times a week.
Right. And it seems like it's really amazing how much that can make a difference if you're flying consistently and you're flying often, that it seems like things just happen to go a lot quicker. I'm
Absolutely.
a terrible example of the other option of that, of taking way too long to get through ratings. So I get that part too. I mean, especially if you're, either working through college or working full time, and or the finances of it, just trying to get the time and the money to afford your flight training can be a challenge sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that was just one of the realizations that I had. I was like, I'm not going to be able to pay for all this in cash. I'm going to have to go in debt. And I wish I would have had that realization before I started my flight training.
Okay.
Because I think that it really would have streamlined it, had it not taken me so long to get my private pilot's license.
You started flying in Part 61 and then transitioned to 141. And I know that there's people who are kind of wondering what the difference is. And I mean, just the quick lay version, the 61 is a little bit more independent as far as the instructors and the direction they can take you with it, where 141 is a school and it's more structured.
It is.
Having experienced both, did you have a preference over one style or over the other?
I really liked what the 141 program when I was in it, because it was very structured and laid out. You knew what was expected of you. That being said, I instructed Part 61, and I really preferred instructing Part 61 over the 141.
Okay.
For probably the same reasons. I didn't have to follow a specific syllabus.
Right.
If somebody was struggling in one area, we could bypass that area, come back to it, and really continue that training.
Sure.
So yeah, I would say I really did like to train in the 141 atmosphere, and it has its pros and cons.
Mm.
But I really liked instructing in Part 61, and I had a lot of students who really excelled in the Part 61 program.
Okay. So you kind of got to my next question here as far as the instructing part. There's a lot of different ways that people will build their hours to get to the 1,500 or lower for the restricted ATPs. For you, was that the natural thing for you to do, or did you look at other options to build hours, or what were your thoughts there?
Instructing, I was looking for it right out the gate. You can build hours fast, and that's all my prior instructors said, that it's a great way to learn. You're never going to forget it. And it gets really instilled in you when you teach somebody about it. And I can say the same. That's definitely the case.
Yeah, because I suppose, when you're trying to teach it to somebody, you have to have that deeper level of understanding to answer the questions that are inevitably going to come, and as such, solidify that material a little bit better for yourself too.
Absolutely, yeah. You really have to understand it to teach it, and also when you teach it 5-6 times a day,
right?
It really starts to become second nature.
Okay. Yeah, just quick aside, like when I was working on my lesson plans for aerodynamics, like I'm like, I don't know if I get this as well as I should get it. And like as I kept building the lesson plan and reviewing stuff, I'm like, just the light bulb clicks and like, oh man. And for me, honestly, it's like, all right, think of air like a liquid. And that's basically like, you can visualize it better. At least I can when I think of it like that. And it's just thinking about it a little differently so I can present it and explain it to somebody else, as opposed to airplanes work by special airplane magic. It's
money.
Money and magic and fairy dust, I think, is how they work.
Yep, absolutely. That's what produces lift.
I'm going to use that answer in my CFI check ride. I'll let you know how it goes.
That'll lighten the mood nonetheless.
Right. So you knew you want to go the CFI route. Here's the tough question, and you can tell me if you don't want to answer this one, but did you enjoy instructing? Because some people it's just a means to an end, right? But other, like, they get into it and they're like, this is my way to give back to aviation because someone did this for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed instructing. Towards the end, when I was getting towards my hours to, move into a jet job, there was really some days that I'm surprised my teeth aren't a couple centimeters short. It really starts to wear on you sometimes. And I had some really long days. I did about 800 hours of dual in my first year as a flight instructor.
Wow.
So I was very, very busy. But looking back, I really, really enjoyed it. And I really miss instructing. Not that I still can't do it. And I think I will do some more instructing. I'd really like to become a DPE someday.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Definitely need those.
yeah, there's not too many around. Little side note, I remember taking my private pilot check ride in Mason City with Doug Rosendahl. Great guy. He does a lot of air shows, flies really cool airplanes. I believe that check ride cost me $300, and a drastic difference from today.
Right. No kidding. I mean, that is one of the struggles with aviation. Just the costs associated sometimes can be rough, but it's worth it in the long run, I think.
Yeah, I remember. I think it became easier to spend money after I started taking lessons, because you're like, I just dropped $450 on a flight lesson today. What's another $50 on a video game or something? You know?
Yeah. Yep. Or how about this headset?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Right. So you mentioned earlier that your initial goal was, I'm going to go towards the airlines. And did that change for you? And if it did, was there a catalyst for that?
North Iowa Air Service. Just get my mind there for a second. And while doing some flight instruction, I was also getting involved a little bit in some light charter work. And I remember my first charter flight, it was a Part 91 owner flight. And we were taking a family from Minneapolis to Saginaw, Michigan. And unfortunately, it was for a death in the family.
Oh, that's too bad.
It is, unfortunately. And it's the first time I'd ever met the family. And, they were giving me hugs and, thanking me for my time, and they appreciated it so much. And that was really an eye-opening experience for me. And I was like, man, I really like this interaction with the passengers.
Yeah.
It's really, really special. So I think that's when I really flipped from airlines to private being the ultimate goal.
Okay. So did you have a specific direction you wanted to go with that? I guess whether it be a certain operation or...
Yeah, just the charters, it was my main goal.
Okay.
I really like Part 91. Part 91 jobs are kind of like unicorns, though.
Right.
Part 91 is very special because you get to know the owners on a little bit deeper level.
Sure.
So that was really what I was seeking.
So when you decided to go this route, you're building up your hours. I assume as you're getting close, you're starting to make a plan for what direction you're going to go, applying for companies, things like that, right? So what does that process look like for you? I mean, were there certain companies that you specifically targeted, or was it kind of just put yourself out there and hope that something hits?
It was kind of, initially it was throw something at the wall and hope something sticks. Luckily for me, when I got hired by my current company, NetJets, it was a great time in aviation to get hired. I was looking at, this was before I went on that charter trip, but I was looking at airlines as I was approaching my hours. I was looking at different charter companies like Tradewinds, Boutique,
Okay.
Flying Pilatus's. The flight department that I was working in, North Iowa Air Service, they did charter work. That was also an option.
All right. So you pick the corporate side and you're applying for these places and you hit the magic hour number. What does the process look like for you next? Like you said, you got selected by NetJets. Like what was the selection process for that for you?
So the NetJets application process was actually very streamlined. I applied instantaneously. I was sent a link to a calendar to do a phone screening.
Okay.
And that was about a week later. I did the phone screening. The phone screening went great. That was with HR. And then I was invited to Columbus, Ohio, which is NetJets corporate headquarters, for a second portion of an interview, which was more HR, just kind of learning about who NetJets is as a company, getting to see their headquarters. Flight safety is right across the road from their headquarters. We got to tour flight safety.
Okay.
And we also did a simulator evaluation.
Okay. And at that point, you're a CFI, right? And you're not necessarily a jet pilot. So the simulator evaluation, what is that like for a CFI trying to transition to the jet world? And I guess, what are the expectations of a company like that at that point as you're doing your sim evaluation?
It was a handful. I did my simulator evaluation in a CRJ 200 FTD. So I'm
not a
used to
Cessna
flying,
172.
not a Cessna 172. I was flying Garmin 430s. So that was a handful. When I got invited, I take that back. I believe it was a night prior. They sent us a PDF of the NetJets call-outs.
Okay.
And we were to memorize those. And I think that's what they were looking for, was how you interact as a crew member.
Gotcha. Okay.
And how well you can perform these call-outs. So I would say that the simulator evaluation could have went better. I remember my sim partner went first, and there was a speed restriction on the SID that we were doing out of New York someplace. And he way oversped the speed restriction. So I was like, man, I'm going to have to pull these thrust levers back like way far.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like 50 knots slower than the speed restriction. So it definitely could have went better. But at the end of the day, I still got the job. So
there you go.
Yeah, they must have saw something in me.
Okay. So as you get the job, what does your training process look like, if you're able to talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I went to Columbus, Ohio, and we did basic company indocs, learning the ins and outs of the company, learning about our flight operations manual, just the company stuff, really.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, I think I was out there for 2 weeks. At the end of that, we get our airplane selection. So
okay.
It's a nice big presentation. There's a big screen, and they throw your name up there and the aircraft that you get put on. And I got chosen to be put into the Phenom 300. Okay. Which is a great airplane. Love the airplane. It's got Garmin G3000, which is so intuitive, so pilot friendly. And after that, I believe I sat at home for about a month before going back to Columbus at the flight safety location. And then I did my initial.
Okay.
And that was about 3 weeks long.
Okay. So with that selection, I want to go back to that because that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really was.
Is that something where in advance you have like almost like a dream sheet of like, this is the order of like my priority of what planes I'd like to fly?
Yep. They gave us a dream sheet.
Okay.
And it had all of our aircraft except for the large cabin. So there was no Global 6000s given out, and there was no Challenger 650s given out.
Okay.
So naturally, I think a lot of me and my classmates put down the heavy metal first, that we wanted to fly, our bigger aircraft. But I'm really glad that I was put into the Phenom 300.
Okay. So once you're done with training, you're selected for the Phenom and you go through flight safety for your initial, all that stuff. I know that with the airlines that go onto the line, they do learning experience. Is it similar to that in the NetJets world, or is it something a little bit different?
It's actually exactly the same. So we are AQP. We're one of the only private companies that are trained to AQP standards, just like the airlines.
Okay.
So we went out and I did 2 7-day tours with a training captain, and we were flying aircraft that had broken VCSs. So basically the air conditioning wasn't working.
Ooh.
So there was no passengers on those flights, and we flew them in cooler climates. So I got to go to Alaska twice.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
So yeah, I got to see some fresh countryside that I wasn't used to seeing.
Yeah, not a lot of that in Iowa.
No. So that was a really cool experience. I was beat after the first week of flying in a lot of mountainous terrain.
Yeah.
A lot of SIDs, a lot of mountainous approaches. So it was a workout for sure.
Yeah, I'll bet. So once you're done with your training, I assume you get on the line. What does that look like in your company? Like, what kind of flying are you doing at that point?
It is all over the board. The Phenom generally does shorter hops. But there's so much variance, I can't say what a specific time frame is. I would say if you had to average it out, we'd probably do an hour 15, hour and a half average flight.
Okay.
But sometimes there's some 3.5 hour flights. I've had a short flight that was 7 minutes. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So with that kind of flying, is it on demand with the clients whenever they want to go? Is it something that you're pre-scheduled, like these are your days that you work, or is it something different even?
Yeah, so NetJets has a lot of different schedule options. We've got an 8 on, 6 off, a 7 on, 7 off, and then we've got what's called crew choice, where you get to bid it like the airlines bid their schedules.
Okay.
And we do it in trimesters. So these crew choice schedules, you can either work 76 days in a trimester, 72 days, 60 days, or 52 days. So I think that equates to like 19, 17, 15, 13 days per month.
Okay.
So my 7 days look like I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa. So I'll very typically get an airline ticket out of Des Moines unless there happens to be a jet here, which has happened a couple times, but it's pretty rare. So I'll get an airline ticket out of Des Moines to wherever they need me to go. I'll meet that jet, fly it around for the week, and then they'll give me a confirmed ticket back to Des Moines on my last day.
Gotcha. You talked earlier about how, that one flight way back when made you want to go a direction where you have more interaction with the customers. So has that been what you've been expecting it to be, or how has that experience been for you?
I would say it's pretty variable.
Okay.
Some customers like to chat, which I love to chat with the clients. Some people just like to get on, get their safety briefing, and then get to where they're going and get out of there, which is fine too.
So I've covered this with some other guests, so I might not go down the road of what are all the things that you're doing on the flight, but maybe I will still. Yeah, what the heck. So with flying in the 135 world, I mean, you guys are kind of everything for everyone in this flight environment, right? It's not like you've got flight attendants with you or I guess even like people who clean out the plane and baggage handlers, right? You're kind of doing it all, right?
Yep. It's a 2-man show in the smaller fleets. Just like you said, we get to clean the airplane, stock the airplane, load the bags, unload the bags, do the safety briefing, all that. But it's a smaller jet. It's not hard to clean. It's not hard to stock. The baggage compartment's only so big.
Yeah.
It can fit a lot, and I've definitely bulked it out before. But all in all, it's pretty easy to take care of.
So what are the biggest pros for you in the direction that you chose in aviation?
Definitely the schedule. It's really nice to get hard days off. 7 days on, 7 days off. I know my schedule for the next 2 years if I stay on the same schedule. So as your seniority increases, there's schedules that you can match up to get holidays off if you want. You can bid certain vacations if your seniority holds it. That's probably the biggest pro. And the flying is, you might go to Aspen and turn around and go to LAX on your next leg.
Sure.
So it definitely keeps you on your toes and keeps things interesting.
Yeah, I suppose it's not just like the same 3 routes or something like that you bid or something like that.
Yeah, I've flown with 20-year captains who we've gone to new airports for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. What are some of the cons that you've experienced in this direction of aviation?
Ooh, the cons. Let me think about that one. The duty days can get long at times, and the schedule is constantly changing. You might go to bed thinking you've got 4 legs to certain airports, and you wake up the next day and you're flying 3 legs to completely different airports. So you can't plan. I've done it to myself.
Sure.
I used to do it all the time. Is like, you look at your weather the night before.
Yeah.
I've gotten briefed to Costa Rica, and you start doing all the studying. Like, okay, what are the operations in Costa Rica? What's the weather going to be like? You push for an update on your phone and it's gone. And you're like, oh man. So I'd say that's the biggest con, is not having a schedule where you're going to be at.
Sure. Are there any things from your previous job in agriculture that you feel translates into your flying world?
I would say that my time in agriculture instilled a good work ethic in me. and that's definitely translated over into aviation. And I think that my time interacting with customers in the ag world definitely helped in aviation. Probably just talking with captains on the road,
Yeah.
You just strike up a conversation as a first officer. A lot of other first officers I've conversed with, we call ourselves chameleons because we have to be so adaptable.
Yeah.
Um, you never know who you're going to fly with, and everybody, although we have SOPs, everybody does stuff just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as far as is there consistency in the crews, but it sounds like it's kind of just how it falls with the schedule. It's not necessarily like you're going to fly with Joe every day for the next 2 months.
Yeah, typically you're going to fly with somebody new each week. You might fly with somebody that you've flown before. There's a couple Phenom captains in Des Moines that I've flown with. Actually, one I've probably flown with 5 times.
Okay.
So we've gotten city paired a considerable amount actually. But for most, I would say you're probably flying with somebody new every week.
Okay.
That you're out.
Gotcha. For you, what do the upgrade options look like for you? I assume that just like the airlines, there's the first officer, there's the captain. Like, are there certain requirements for captain upgrade within your company, or what is the process for that?
Yeah, so in our company, it's just the upgrades are just seniority based. So when I was hired, the projection for captain upgrades was 18 months, a year and a half.
Okay.
I've been with NetJets for 18 months, actually, a year and a half. And now they're projecting it'll be about 3 years. We've had a hard time getting airplanes, since everything's slowed down.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The Phenom is very junior.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that that's going to be the first upgrade available for me.
Okay. That brings up a good question. Like, how has the slowdown of the just aviation boom that we had a couple of years ago, how has that impacted things? I mean, you mentioned that the time to upgrade is a little bit longer, but how else have you guys felt that impact with your company?
Within our company, our chief pilot and CEO called the time after COVID revenge flying time.
Okay.
because things were, shut down, people weren't getting their fix. And I think a lot of people after COVID, maybe they got a taste of private aviation and they're like, wow, this is how to travel.
Okay.
So it just really exploded after COVID. I think that NetJets, don't hold me to it, but I believe we've got a 5-year wait list for new owners.
Wow.
Yeah, just crazy.
That is crazy. Is NetJets unique in their model of how they work with different owners of aircraft, things like that? Or what is the model that NetJets flies with?
NetJets' model is fractional ownership, and they pioneered that. They're the inventors of the fractional ownership. So with our company, you can purchase as little as 1/16th of a share in an aircraft, and that'll give you a 25-hour allotment annually.
Okay.
So, and there's exchange rates. So let's say that you're a Phenom owner and you want to take fly a little more comfortably. So you want to fly in a Latitude down to the Bahamas instead of the Phenom. I don't know the exchange rate or exactly how that works, but I've heard that maybe an hour in the Phenom is true, and maybe 1 hour in the Latitude might cost you 1.4 hours of your contract.
Got it. Okay.
So
it's not like you're typically flying with the exact same people every time you take the plane up. It could be.
I would say it's actually very rare. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very rare that we will sit and wait with the clients even on a shorter turn.
Oh, okay.
Maybe within 4 hours. It's very, very common for the Phenom, especially hour turns. You drop the clients off and blast off within the next hour.
Okay.
Typically an empty leg to reposition to another client trip.
Sure. Okay. So before I get to the final question, is there anything else I haven't covered that you want to talk about with either your journey into aviation or your current role with NetJets?
I think we really touched on a lot of it. Depends what your next question is.
It's a really hard question. So what advice would you have for anyone else who's looking to change careers into the aviation industry?
Yeah. Even though that the aviation industry is not booming like it was 2 years ago, I think that it's still a really good career to get into now. Um, I think if you choose to get into it, here's some advice that I would give to carry along your journey. Definitely get some mentors and get out and talk to other pilots. And that's gonna be the biggest thing to help you through your training. And not to get too focused on any downturns in your training and try to have fun with it. I remember in my training being so hyper fixated on the things that I was struggling with. And it just really eats away at you when you're outside of the airplane.
Yeah.
The big thing is have fun with it. You're going to look back and be like, man, that this low level VFR flying is some of the funnest flying that I'm going to get to do.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of good mentors in my career so far that have really helped me and propelled me to the position I'm in now. So that's probably my biggest advice for people looking to get into aviation and changing their career path.
And it's great advice too. I mean, I've heard so many stories of like people talking about just rushing through training and not really sitting back and enjoying the process.
Yeah, it's hard to do because people always, want to be 10 steps ahead of where they are. You kind of daydream about having that fancy jet job.
Yeah.
But that's some of the flying that I'm jealous that other people get to do. I don't get to do too much VFR flying. I'd love to get an old trainer and just do a couple laps in the pattern.
Yeah, right. Punch a couple holes in the sky.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Collin, I really appreciate you coming on, telling your story, and telling us a bit about your journey and what you're doing now in aviation, and hopefully inspiring some others along the way. So, really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks a lot, Collin, for joining me on this episode of the AeroExploration Podcast and sharing your story of moving into the aviation industry. Now, one of the key points that I took away is a lesson that I probably need to take myself, and that is in reference to how often you're flying during flight training. Now, if we're talking aviation career moves, then you might not have a choice, and you might only have that 1 day a week to fly. So with that, you have to kind of measure your expectations on how long this rating is going to take. I mean, Collin talked about how flying once a week got him through a rating in 2 years. Now, that's quite a long time to work through a rating. I know because I've done it. And you do end up repeating some lessons. So he talks about moving towards flying 3 to 4 times a week and how much more accelerated his progress was once he did that. Again, I understand because of my own personal experience, that doesn't work for everybody. And the pace you take is the pace that you take. But it's just something, again, that understand the expectations going into it of how long realistically that progress is going to take. So thank you once again, Collin, for joining me on the podcast, for sharing your story and some of your insights along the way. All right, before I go, if you're liking what I'm doing, be sure to leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Share it with your friends, steal their phones, subscribe them to the podcast, whatever it takes to keep getting the word out about AeroExploration and the great stories that we're sharing here. If you've got a topic or you want to be a guest on an episode of AeroExploration, you can reach out to me at jim@flyingmidwest.com or on any of my social medias, which are all at aero_exploration. And don't forget again about the winter merch that's out now and the 20% off code available now through October 1st, which is COLD20. Again, all that will be down in the show notes, or you can go to flymidwest.com/merch. Thanks once again for joining me on this episode. This is AeroExploration, and we will see you next time.